There's an island where eerie dolls watch your every move, another place where every single step lands on the remains of the dead, and a village where staying longer than a day could mean an agonizing end. Despite their postcard-perfect settings, these are some of the scariest places on Earth. We'll be revealing even more unsettling locations on today's episode of the Infographics Show, the creepiest places on Earth. Number 24, the Island of the Dolls, Mexico. Think one creepy doll is bad? Try thousands, all staring at you. The Island of the Dolls is an island in the Xochimilco Canal system just south of Mexico City. It's a pretty typical example of a Mexican chinampa, a type of man-made island used for farming. But take a closer look, and you'll see thousands of decaying dolls hanging from trees, nailed to posts, and tangled in the vines. During the 20th century, the island's owner, Don Julian Santana Barrera, started collecting dolls and hanging them around the island. According to local legend, his macabre hobby began after a young girl drowned near the island and he couldn't save her. Racked with guilt, he started covering the island in dolls as a tribute to her. Locals traveling the canals claimed the dolls would move on their own, believing that the little girl's ghost haunts the island. The Island of the Dolls went from local legend to being nationally famous in 1943 when it was used as the filming location for the movie Maria Candelaria. Barrera himself drowned in the canal in 2001 at the age of 80, but his family still owns the island and keeps it open as a tourist attraction. To this day, visitors are encouraged to bring their own dolls to the island, but some superstitious boat captains refuse to travel there. But unlike this next place, at least there's not a floating killer orb. Number 23. Skinwalker Ranch, USA. In 1994, cattle ranchers Terry and Gwen Sherman moved their family to a ranch in the Uinta Basin of Utah in the USA, thinking that it would be a good investment. What they got instead were 2 years of terror as the ranch came under siege by paranormal forces. In addition to poltergeist-like activity within the house itself, including disembodied voices, the family also witnessed UFO activity in the sky around the property. The Shermans even claimed to have seen portals open up in thin air in front of them. Their cattle would turn up dead by mysterious wounds, and Terry Sherman lost his hunting dogs to a strange glowing orb that vaporized them into nothing. But perhaps the freakiest sighting is one that gave the ranch its name, Skinwalker Ranch. Not too long after moving to the ranch, the Shermans saw an enormous wolf-like creature drag away one of their calves. Sightings like this are often attributed to the local Navajo legend of the Skinwalker, a kind of dark warlock who terrorizes villagers by taking the form of an animal. Since the Shermans moved out, the property has been bought by a private research group looking to document and investigate the ranch's mysterious happenings. Is it getting hot in here? Maybe it's this next creepy place. Number 22. Sloss Furnaces, USA. Sloss furnaces were built in 1880 in Birmingham, Alabama, in order to produce iron for the city's railroad. The blast furnace, which operated until 1971, used state-of-the-art technology to produce thousands of tons of iron. But while it bolstered the city's economy, it wasn't exactly a safe work environment. Furnace workers regularly pulled 12-hour shifts in intense heat and poor visibility due to the smoke. On top of that, they were mistreated by their employers. The night shift chief, James Wormwood in particular, was responsible for dozens of deaths and injuries due to his negligence. But in 1906, justice, or karma, finally caught up with him. Wormwood fell from the top of the furnace into a vat of molten iron. His ghost is one of many reported to still haunt the furnaces to this day. Visitors report being pushed near the site of his death and a ghostly voice saying, "Get back to work." In 1971, just before the furnaces were shut down and turned into a museum, a night watchman named Samuel Blumenthal was rushed to the hospital with severe third-degree burns, even though the ovens were out. According to Blumenthal, the burns came from an encounter with a demonic entity. Maybe you need a vacation after hearing that, and we know a perfect resort. Number 21. Sanji Pod City, Taiwan. The Sanji Pod City was built in 1978 near Tamsui on the northern coast of Taiwan. It was marketed as a city of the future, a home away from home for wealthy local families and visiting American soldiers. The unique buildings, which look like something you would see in a sci-fi movie, were constructed in the Futuro style by the Hung Kuo Group. Each UFO-shaped home was equipped with the kinds of modern conveniences that were still rare in Taiwan at the time. However, the project failed due to a number of construction accidents that spooked investors enough to pull out. Some people thought the project was cursed due to the fact that an ancient dragon statue had been damaged in the process of widening the road. A rumor also spread that the city was built on top of an old graveyard. The project was abandoned until 1989 when the site was bought by another company. The new owners intended to get the city up and running, but unfortunately found that the buildings weren't as structurally sound as they initially thought, and would actually be unsafe to live in. But at least it wasn't the site of countless deaths. Our next place, not so much. Number 20. Poveglia Island, Italy. Venice is famous for its lagoon and the system of canals that connects to the many islands that make up the city. But there is one island the locals always steer clear of: Poveglia Island. In the 18th century, Poveglia Island was a quarantine site for carriers of the Black Death, and because of that deadly disease, most of the people who were sent there over the centuries were never seen alive again. It's estimated that over 160,000 plague victims lived on the island at one time, and the city government would routinely burn the corpses of the dead to try to stop the spread of the illness. They did this so often, in fact, that to this day, more than 50% of the soil on the island is made up of burnt human cells. Adding to this dark history, in 1922 the island was the site of a lunatic asylum, where rumors spread that the doctors were performing experiments on the patients. The asylum was shuttered in 1968, and Poveglia Island has been abandoned and off-limits to visitors ever since. You know what? Forget island vacations. Let's go to a nice motel instead. Number 19. Clown Motel, USA. In the town of Tonopah, Nevada, there's a motel that has gained something of a reputation over the years. Built in 1985 by siblings Leona and Leroy David, it sits right next to the town's cemetery, conveniently close to their father's final resting place. The siblings wanted to create a tribute to dear old dad, who really loved clowns. And so the Clown Motel was born, as a place to house Clarence David's clown collection. Much like what tourists do at the Island of the Dolls, guests to the Clown Motel are encouraged to donate their own clown-themed decorations when they come to stay. Being so close to a graveyard, naturally there are rumors about the place being haunted. But the Clown Motel maintains its reputation for being America's scariest hotel just because of the hundreds and hundreds of clowns inside. The place is so well known that it's been the subject of multiple horror movies and hosted a number of ghost hunting reality shows. It even inspired writer Christopher Sabella to spend a month there and document his experience in the graphic novel, I Lived in a Clown Motel. Speaking of places filled with weird objects. Number 18. St. George's Church, Czech Republic. St. George's Church is a Roman Catholic church located in the Czech village of Lukova, close to the border with Germany. It, along with the cemetery, was built all the way back in the 14th century and has seen its fair share of drama and tragedies. It was renovated in the 16th century after sustaining damage in the Hussite Wars and then again after a fire in the 1800s. But following World War II, the church began to fall into disrepair, as the new communist government saw no point to maintain it. However, the building wouldn't be completely abandoned until 1968, when the roof came down on a group of mourners attending a funeral service. Nobody was injured, but the incident made locals start to avoid the church, fearing that another worse accident could take place. Rumors started to spread that the church was cursed, and the building remained untouched from the late 60s, that is, until 2012, when artist Jakub Drava brought it back to life in the creepiest way possible. He filled the pews with life-sized, ghostly plaster figures, seated as if still attending Mass. The plaster ghosts serve as an eerie representation of the important part that this now decrepit church once played in everyday village life. Our next place doesn't have quite the same happy ending. Number 17. Winchester Mystery House, USA. In 1886, wealthy widow Sarah Winchester started renovations on her house in San Jose, California, and never stopped. Armed with the vast fortune she inherited from her late husband, the heir to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, Sarah transformed the modest farmhouse into a sprawling 7-story labyrinth. It was a bizarre architectural fever dream, full of nonsensical hallways, secret passages, extravagant stained glass windows, and staircases to nowhere. She even had the whole mansion hooked up with running water, push-button gas lights, and central heating, which would have cost a pretty penny back in the late 19th century. What made Sarah Winchester's endless renovations even weirder was that she didn't seem to have a plan, and she never explained why she made any of the decisions she did. However, some of the contractors claimed that Sarah Winchester was having daily seances, which led many to believe that she was receiving her building instructions from the great beyond. The Mystery House is now a tourist attraction where guests frequently report strange ghost activity. Even now, the house has yet to give up all of its secrets. As recently as 2016, the house owners discovered a secret attic that hadn't been opened since Sarah's death in 1922. But in some freaky places, the deaths never stopped. Number 16. Hotel Cecil, USA. Staying in California, let's now go to the busy streets of Los Angeles, where a seemingly run-of-the-mill hotel has become known as one of the most evil buildings in America. The Cecil Hotel, built in 1924, has been the location of at least 16 homicides and deaths since it was first opened. Intended to be a luxury hotel by its original owner, William Hanner, the Cecil has 700 guest rooms and cost $1 million to build. However, Los Angeles was hit hard by the Great Depression a few years later, particularly the neighborhood around the Cecil, which became known as Skid Row. The Cecil became a refuge for the city's surging unhoused population and quickly gained a reputation for being a hotbed of crime and drug use. Among the infamous deaths tied to the hotel are Pauline Otten, who leapt from a window and tragically killed a passerby below, Goldie Osgood, brutally murdered in her room by an unknown assailant, and Elisa Lam, who drowned in the hotel's water tank after suffering a psychotic episode. The hotel also housed serial killer Richard Ramirez during his reign of terror, and according to legend, the Black Dahlia was last seen at the hotel bar before her grisly end. Let's get out of California and head over to India instead. Number 15. Bhangar Fort, India. This 16th century fort in the Aravalli Range Hills is a breathtaking sight if you're ever on vacation in India. A beautifully preserved castle built under the reign of Raja Bhagwant Das. It's considered a major tourist attraction for the Alwar district, and it's also got a pretty freaky title on top of that, the most haunted building in India. And it's earned that nickname with a truly terrifying reputation. There are a number of disturbing legends that have built up around the fort over time. One of the most enduring comes from an ancient religious figure who declared that no house should ever rise taller than his own. If anyone defied this warning, it would spell the doom of the fort and the entire town around it. So when a series of columns were built around the fort that were bigger than the holy man's house, death and destruction arrived. There was also another story about a dark sorcerer who tried to use a love potion to seduce a princess who lived in the fort. She rejected his advances and threw the potion at a nearby boulder, causing the boulder to roll over onto a priest, killing him and cursing the fort forever. The locals believe that anyone who ventures inside risks being cursed. If you're not careful when you visit, a grisly fate might befall you not long after. Because all of the rumors about it, the Indian authorities even forbid tourists from visiting the place at night. After all, you would hate to become just one more part of the scary story. Speaking of scary stories. Number 14. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. From the name alone, you would never know that sleepy Point Pleasant in West Virginia was once ground zero for one of the most famous paranormal sightings in U.S. history. Locals reported a terrifying figure with massive wings and glowing red eyes stalking the night skies, a creature that would become known as the Mothman. The first Mothman sighting happened in 1966 when two couples parked near an abandoned World War II munitions plant and reported seeing a towering winged figure with glowing red eyes. Paranormal author John Keel detailed the events in the Mothman prophecies, from creepy anonymous phone calls and unexplained lights in the sky to visits from shadowy men in black warning witnesses to stay silent. All of this paranormal freakiness came to a head in 1967 when the local Silver Bridge collapsed 10 days before Christmas, killing 46 people, two of their bodies never even being recovered. After the incident, plenty of people speculated that the Mothman was a kind of omen of doom, appearing to warn the citizens of Point Pleasant of the impending tragedy. These days, Mothman is actually the town's greatest asset as a tourist draw. In 2003, the artist Bob Roach created a 12-foot-tall metal statue of Mothman in the town. It can even be found near the Mothman Museum and Research Center, established in 2005. They even have a yearly Mothman Festival. And who knows, if you attend, you might even see him, and he might just foretell your doom as well. Number 13. Alcatraz Island, USA. Alcatraz Island, located in San Francisco Bay, operated as a military post and military prison from 1850 until it was turned over to the Department of Justice in 1933. Alcatraz quickly gained a reputation for being the toughest prison in America, where only the worst criminals were sent, and the punishments were extremely severe. So it's no surprise that even while it was an active prison, it gained a reputation for being haunted. One famous story features an inmate in the notorious D Block crying out to the guards that a red-eyed demon was in the cell with him. The guards ignored his cries, only to find him strangled to death the next morning. The prison warden himself even claimed to hear the sound of a crying woman while conducting a tour of the facility. The island is now a museum and national park, but visitors still hear the ghostly voices and see shadowy figures. Some even hear ghostly music coming from the shower room where notorious gangster Al Capone used to practice his banjo while he was incarcerated. And even a musical gangster's ghost is less creepy than our next one. Number 12. Kolmanskop, Namibia. Imagine being lost in the African desert and stumbling onto an abandoned but perfectly preserved Edwardian-era European-style town. It sounds weird, but that is what it's like to visit Kolmanskop. The mining town was built in the Namib Desert after a man named Zacharias Lawala found diamonds in the area while working on the railroad. The town was built in the style of a German city with all the amenities of modern life in the early 20th century. It even had the first X-ray station in the southern hemisphere. But following World War I, the diamond mine started to dry up, and by the 1920s, most of the residents had moved elsewhere, especially after even bigger diamond deposits were discovered a few miles down the river in 1928. The last residents packed up and left in the 1950s, leaving Kolmanskop to be reclaimed by the desert sands, though traveling there requires government permits. This eerie location is a popular destination for photographers and has served as a filming location for a number of movies, shows, and music videos, including the recent Fallout TV series where the ghost town doubled for a post-nuclear war wasteland. Now let's go from desert to a deep, dark forest. Number 11. Hoia Baciu Forest, Romania. Located just outside of Cluj-Napoca, Transylvania, is a forest that covers an area of about 1.2 square miles, known as Hoia Baciu. And even though it is beautiful during the day, most locals wouldn't go there after dark if you paid them. People frequently get lost in the forest, sometimes losing track of several hours without realizing how much time has passed. One young girl reportedly was missing for 5 years before finding her way out of the forest, supposedly unaged with no memory of where she'd been. According to legend, a shepherd and his entire flock of 200 sheep once went into the forest and never came out. Inside the forest, visitors report seeing mysterious lights in the sky. Even electronic equipment has also been known to malfunction. One TV crew who flew over the top of the forest to get footage of it even had the roof ripped off of their aircraft by unknown forces. Those who are lucky enough to find their way out of the forest often find scratches and bruises on their bodies that weren't there before. Eeriest of all is the clearing, a perfectly circular patch in the middle of the forest where no vegetation can grow. It's no wonder the place is sometimes called Romania's Bermuda Triangle. It's almost enough to drive you insane. Hey, that reminds us. Number 10. Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, USA. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia was fraught with drama and controversy before it was even built. Initially constructed using prison labor in 1858, the project was halted due to the Civil War in 1861. When Virginia seceded from the United States, the government demanded the return of the funds that would have been used to finish the asylum. But before the money could be returned, the 7th Ohio Volunteer Infantry seized the money and delivered it to the new Virginia government. With this money, the asylum would be completed in 1881. Much of the building material was stolen during the Confederate raids. Like many mental hospitals of the 19th and 20th centuries, the lunatic asylum had poor conditions for its residents, and overcrowding led to diseases spreading like wildfire. And in any place where people are mistreated, rumors of ghostly activity aren't too far behind. Since the hospital's main building has been reopened as a museum, workers and visitors to the building have reported doors slamming on their own, ghostly voices, and the feeling of being watched. Some visitors have even spotted the figure of a little boy standing in the corner of a room. What could be creepier than going to hell? That's probably what the architects behind this next place were thinking. Number 9. Fengdu Ghost City, China. The Ghost City in Fengdu, China is a complex of shrines and temples designed to recreate a journey through the Diyu and Naraka, the Chinese and Buddhist equivalents of hell. The complex has been around since the Han Dynasty, about 2,000 years ago. According to legend, the city's founders were two officials called Ying Changsheng and Wang Fangping, who found the secret to immortality when they settled in the area. In a fun thematic flair, the combination of the two men's name, Yin Wang, roughly translates to King of Hell. The Ghost City features terrifying artwork and statues depicting ghosts, devils, and sinners facing their divine punishments in the afterlife. Local landmarks have spooky names like Last Glance at Home Tower and Ghost Torturing Pass. And overlooking the entire city is an enormous stone statue of a man known as the Ghost King, carved into the side of a mountain. In recent years, the Ghost City has become a popular tourist attraction, which includes a haunted house ride and roaming scare actors dressed as Chinese demons. And let's not leave hell just yet. Number 8. The Door to Hell, Turkmenistan. Another especially hellish place to go is the Darvaza gas crater, also known as the Door to Hell in Darvaza, Turkmenistan. As the name suggests, it's a big crater in the ground that's been on fire since the 1980s. Since a lot of documents concerning the location are either missing or classified, it's unclear how this giant fire pit formed. Geologists from the area have two major theories. One is that the crater collapsed in the 60s and the fire was started by the government 20 years later to prevent the emission of poisonous gases. Others have claimed that it was an attempt to drill for oil that went horribly wrong. Either way, all attempts to stop the fire so far have failed. Interestingly enough, despite the deadly nature of the gas crater, it's become a moderately popular tourist destination, even serving as a pit stop in the 2018 Amul Hazar Automobile Rally. This might seem weird, but given that Turkmenistan is one of the least visited countries on Earth, it seems like the government there is just desperate to convince people that they have even one interesting thing for people to come see, even if that thing is just a huge burning hole in the ground. Number 7. Shark Alley, South Africa. Off the coast of South Africa, near the fishing village of Hansbaai, is a narrow channel of ocean between Dyer Island and Geyser Rock called Shark Alley. The channel is home to about 50,000 Cape fur seals, which in turn attract a huge population of Shark Alley's namesake, great white sharks. In fact, the waters around Dyer Island have the greatest population density of great whites in the world. During the peak shark season between June and September, it's possible to see the sharks breaching, a hunting behavior where they charge their prey from below, momentarily leaping out of the ocean in the process. Shark Alley is a popular spot for adventurous tourists to go cage diving to get up close and personal with these prehistoric predators. Amazingly, some people even free swim in Shark Alley. In 2021, a man named Devet de Toy became the first person to swim from Hansbaai to Dyer Island and back. His goal was to raise awareness for shark conservation by showing how little threat these great whites actually pose to human swimmers. That is a very noble cause, but we're happy to take Devet's word for it and not try that ourselves. Speaking of places full of animals that could kill the hell out of you if they wanted to, Number 6. Snake Island, Brazil. Off the southeastern coast of Brazil, there's an island home to a snake so venomous that the Brazilian government has outlawed all travel to it. Locals know this island as Ilha de Queimada Grande, but internationally it goes by the nickname Snake Island. Snake Island is home to a unique species of viper called the golden lancehead, which has venom so potent it can kill you within an hour of being bitten. The island was once a part of mainland Brazil, but rising sea levels cut it off, leaving the snake populations to evolve to their changing environment. And one of those adaptations was stronger venom. According to legends, the last people to live on the island were a lighthouse keeper and his family back in the 1920s, who all died of snake bites. However, despite the government mandating that Snake Island was off limits, that doesn't mean it never gets visitors. Golden lancehead venom has shown some potential to combat heart conditions, which has led to a high demand for the stuff on the black market. Some foolhardy poachers are still willing to risk a deadly bite just to make a quick buck. Number 5. The Stanley Hotel, USA. How about a place so creepy it gives horror writers nightmares? Look no further than the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. This palatial hotel was opened in 1909 by Freeland Oscar Stanley, who settled in the area after the mountain air had miraculously cured his tuberculosis. The Stanley had all the opulence of a city hotel in a beautiful mountain setting, complete with indoor plumbing, telephones, and electricity. For decades, it was considered one of the nicest places to stay in the Rocky Mountains. But by the 1970s, it had fallen into disrepair and become a shadow of its former glory. And naturally, by then it was also rumored to be horrifically haunted. People report hearing voices, laughter, and music coming from empty rooms. The ghost of a maid by the name of Elizabeth Wilson supposedly haunts room 217. This is the very room that Stephen and Tabitha King stayed in when they visited in the 1970s, while Stephen was working on his novel, The Stand. It was the last night of the season, so the hotel was nearly empty, and the atmosphere was so creepy that Stephen King had nightmares. When he woke up, he started writing a rough outline that would become his next novel, The Shining. Now let's hit the open road to certain death. Number 4. Death Road, Bolivia. Driving can be pretty scary on a normal road, but the road leading from La Paz to Coroico in Bolivia takes that to a whole new level. The road, which is officially called North Yungas Road, is more commonly known as Death Road for the hundreds of fatal accidents that have happened on it. Death Road is a narrow dirt road with no guardrails to protect unlucky drivers from falls of up to 2,000 feet. On top of that, the area is often blanketed in a thick fog cutting visibility down to almost nothing. The road slopes downhill nearly the entire way, with only one brief uphill stretch, making speed difficult to control. This road was built in the 1930s by Paraguayan prisoners of the Chaco War, and it's estimated that 200 to 300 people die while trying to traverse it each year. Nowadays, though, it's a little less dangerous, due to a lack of traffic more than anything else. A new modern highway was built between La Paz to Corico starting in 2006, and now the original Death Road is rarely traveled by anyone but adrenaline junkie cyclists. Now we move into the big three, the creepiest of the creepy. Let's go. Number 3. Paris Catacombs, France. Paris may be the city of lights, but underneath its picturesque streets is an especially creepy dark side, a network of underground ossuaries that collectively hold the remains of over 6 million people. The catacombs were built in the 1770s as a way to combat overcrowding in the city's cemetery. The problem was so bad, particularly at the Holy Innocents Cemetery, that the weight of all the bodies was causing structural collapses in the surrounding walls. The underground spaces that served as the catacombs are the dark, depleted limestone mines on the south side of the city. And in 1788, under the cover of darkness, hundreds and thousands of bodies were relocated by wagons. Within 2 years, the remains of the majority of the city's cemeteries were entirely moved to the catacombs. After further renovations a century later, the catacombs were open to the public. During the Second World War, the catacombs served as a vital meeting place for the French resistance. And it's not just dead bodies down there. In 2004, police discovered that urban explorer collective Les Zeux had built a functioning movie theater in a section of the catacombs. You won't find one of those in our next location. Number 2. Centralia, USA. The borough of Centralia, Pennsylvania, has a permanent population of only 5 residents as of 2020, and its postal code has been discontinued by the USPS. What could possibly have happened to turn this normal American town into a ghost town? Well, much like the door to hell that we mentioned earlier, Centralia is home to a fire that has been burning continuously since 1962. When a seam in a coal mine was accidentally ignited, it quickly became dangerous to residents. Gas station fuel tanks started to heat up, carbon monoxide started leaking out of the cracks in the ground, and sinkholes opened up which nearly swallowed people whole. In 1983, after considerable pressure, Congress finally allocated $42 million to relocate the town's residents. Further residents were later evacuated in the 1990s. Today, the town of Centralia is like a real-life Silent Hill, full of overgrown trees and blanketed by plumes of smoke and noxious fog. The cracked and abandoned section of Route 61 that leads toward the town is covered in graffiti, while a chain blocking the road is decorated with hanging letters that spell "Stay Out." But despite the dangers caused by the fire, strip coal mining still takes place around Centralia. And even that is nowhere near as noxious as our creepiest place in the world. Number 1. Chernobyl Exclusion Zone, Ukraine. What might be the most famous ghost town in the world, the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone in Pripyat, Ukraine. Following the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster, the Soviet authorities declared an exclusion zone and evacuated any people living within 18 miles of the reactor meltdown. Today, radiation levels within that zone are still too high to allow for permanent habitation, and it'll likely be that way for centuries, so the town of Pripyat sits completely abandoned. The town was built in 1970 as a model communist city designed for young families. The town had a gym, a bar, a movie theater, even an amusement park. It even still has a statue of Lenin, which really makes Pripyat feel like a true 1980s Soviet time capsule. Nowadays, there's been an increase in tourism to the site, although every visitor to the exclusion zone has to be closely monitored for radiation exposure. And there is a strict 8 p.m. curfew. But while the area isn't suitable for humans, plants and wildlife have thrived in the absence of humans, with populations of lynx, boar, moose, and wolves returning to the zone after decades of being absent. So now we get to add radioactive wolves to our list of top 10 worst fears. Now check out the most disturbing missing person cases you've never heard of, or watch this video instead.